Hey guys, tonight we slip into a Venice that never quite wakes up, a city that prefers candlelight to sunshine and secrets to breakfast. The air feels heavy with candle smoke and fresh bread, plus a faint metallic tang from the lagoon. Think of a bakery built on a rusty anchor. You're standing in a noisy square that smells suspiciously unlike flowers. It's more like wet rope, roasted chestnuts, and the ghost of someone's expensive cologne. Shadows stretch across stone walls like sleepy cats. Only these cats could knife you for a bad rhyme. Honestly, you probably wouldn't last an hour here. Your phone battery would die of humidity before you figured out how to ask for a charger in Renaissance Italian. Most modern folks wouldn't make it past breakfast, because breakfast is last night's wine and a hard stare from a seagull the size of a house cat. Survival rating, 1 star out of 5, and that star is just the reflection of a star in a puddle you're about to step in. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ferryman who rowed you across the lagoon had only 3 teeth, but claimed to have kissed Veronica Franco, the most famous poet courtesan in the Republic. You can't tell if the wink he gives you is pride or periodontal slackness. Your feet find the dock's wet planks. Each step makes a sound like a book closing, and you imagine every footstep here has ended at least one story. Above you, balconies sag under the weight of geraniums that have never heard of restraint. Their petals drop like tiny pink surrender flags. A bell somewhere tolls terse, though it's almost midnight. Venetian clocks do whatever they want, time being a tourist like you. You adjust the borrowed cloak clasped at your throat. It smells of cloves and someone else's cigar, a combination that somehow steadies your pulse. Ahead, a narrow cal beckons, so slender that you could stretch out your arms and brush both walls with your fingertips, feeling the chill of marble and the warmth of baked brick at the same time. Somewhere inside that tunnel of stone, a woman's laugh rings out, bright as cut crystal, lazy as a cat in sunshine, promising that language itself is about to flirt with you. You follow the laugh because that's what stories do. They follow the sound of their own next sentence. The laugh leads you under a sottoportico where laundry hangs like prayer flags for house spirits, and you emerge into a pocket-sized campiello lit by a single torch. There she is, hair the color of burnt cinnamon, sleeves the color of midnight peacocks, eyes the color of I dare you. She introduces herself only as Lucia when it suits me, and you catch the faint ink smudge on her index finger, poet's lipstick. Around her neck hangs a tiny gold pen the size of an eyelash. It barbs when she talks, punctuation made visible. You try a Venetian greeting you practiced on the ferry. It comes out sounding like a drunk owl, but she rewards you with a curtsy so precise it could file taxes. Lucia explains, between syllables of amusement, that you're expected at the salon tonight. Word travels faster than gondolas in this city, especially word about newcomers who look soft as fresh mozzarella. She offers her arm. The fabric of her sleeve whispers conspiracies against your wrist. Together you glide across the square, past a fountain where 2 marble cherubs pee in perfect iambic pentameter. A one-eyed cat follows at a respectful distance, occasionally murmuring feline commentary on your gait. Apparently you walk like someone who's used to even sidewalks. Lucia tells you the cat is called Tasso, named after the poet who went mad for love. The cat seems to be considering the same career move. You pass a bakery shuttered for the night, but the smell of almond pastry lingers like a party guest who refuses to acknowledge the candles are out. She quizzes you on your favorite verse. When you mumble something about subway ads, she laughs again, softer, as if deciding you're salvageable material. At a doorway draped with indigo velvet, she pauses, fingertips to your chest in a gesture that feels half blessing, half bribe. Remember, she murmurs, inside, every compliment is a loan with compound interest. The door swings inward before you can ask the exchange rate on flattery. The velvet curtain brushes your cheek like a cat who's decided you're worth owning, and then you're inside. Candle smoke hangs in strata. Warm beeswax near the ceiling, guttered tallow at nose level, and something suspiciously like singed hair near the parquet. The room is shaped like a sideways almond. Walls wear tapestries of mermaids playing lutes, their tails strategically misplaced for modesty. A single harpsichord plucks a pattern that feels like walking downstairs in the dark, one tentative note at a time. Lucia steers you toward a low table where ink pots nestle in silver coasters to keep them from scuttling away. You count 7 different perfumes: rose, bergamot, pipe smoke, almond, old books, sea air, and one elusive scent that reminds you of library carpet after rain. Gaspara, the hostess, glides over in a gown the color of moon on water. When she moves, the fabric murmurs small talk to itself. She welcomes you with the phrase, "Enter as ink, leave as illumination," which sounds like a fair exchange rate. Someone presses a glass into your hand. The wine inside is so dark it reflects your future upside down. A tiny candied violet floats on top, edible punctuation. You're guided to a cushion where poets sit cross-legged, their headdresses forming a miniature mountain range of feathers and pearls. The rule, whispered by a boy with a lute, is speak only in metaphor until the second hour strikes. Otherwise, you owe the room a sonnet. Your first metaphor, "I am a kettle nearing whistle," earns approving nods and a refill. Tasso the cat appears, tail high, and curls on your borrowed cloak like a comma deciding the sentence has gone on long enough. Somewhere behind you, a woman laughs into her fan. The laugh lands on the harpsichord strings and makes them shiver. Gaspara taps the rim of her glass with a quill. The ping travels faster than gossip, and the room settles into a soft, expectant hush. She lifts one silver sleeve, revealing a bracelet of tiny bells that chime like distant goats on a hillside you've never visited but somehow remember. "Tonight," she says, "we trade verses for whispers and whispers for warmth," which sounds like the sort of currency exchange a dream would offer. You realize her eyelids are dusted with powdered lappies, a luxury that costs more than the boat that brought you. Each blink is a small investment. A servant in seafoam green appears bearing a tray of sugared almonds arranged like constellations. You're told to pick one and make a wish in near rhyme. You mumble, "Let my tongue stay untangled," and the almond dissolves before you can decide if that slant rhyme counts. Gaspara invites you to recite a line from your homeland. You offer the only poem you memorized in school, something about daffodils, and instantly feel like you've brought a spoon to a sword fight. Surprisingly, the room sighs with pleasure. One man wipes away a tear, whispering that daffodils are just Venetian sunflowers who learned to swim. Lucia nudges your ribs. "See? Nonsense travels well. Pack it in your pocket for later." Gaspara claps twice. Curtains part, revealing a niche where a single candle burns inside a glass sphere of green water. The flame looks seasick, but determined. She explains it's a mermaid's confession, a candle that will drown itself by dawn, taking every secret spoken tonight down with it. You feel your heartbeat slow, as though the candle has already started sipping your anxiety. A basket of blank paper swans circles the room. Each guest takes one, promising to return it folded into a new shape of meaning. Your swan is warm, as if it recently hatched from a printer's press. Its wings bear the faint watermark of an anchor wearing a crown. Gaspara raises her glass again. To ink that heals and secrets that behave, she toasts, and everyone drinks like conspirators who have forgotten the plot but love the company. The paper swan in your palm rustles, eager to become a stanza, and you realize the quill you're holding is still warm from someone else's fingers. Literary hand-me-downs. Lucia shows you how to slit the swan's spine with a fingernail, revealing a hollow where a single drop of ink waits like a dark pearl. No crossing out, she warns. Venice forgives everything except second thoughts, which explains why the canals look so decisively curved. You dip the bishop biting quill. The ink smells of blackberries left overnight in a brass bowl, sweet but vaguely metallic, like gossip that's begun to rust. Across the table, a man in a fox-shaped mask writes with his paper swan balanced on the bridge of his nose. Every time he nods, the swan flaps once. Poetry as performance plus physiotherapy. Your own verse starts. I arrived with salt on my collar and left my name in the ferryman's pocket, which feels honest enough to commit to history. Gaspara glides behind you, reads over your shoulder without touching, her breath scented with candied ginger, an edible whisper of encouragement. Someone's candle gutters, casting a shadow that looks exactly like a gondola overturned. You wonder if shadows mime prophecies or just mock anxieties. The rule of metaphor is still in force, so when you ask for more paper you must say, my thoughts have outgrown their cradle, and a page slides toward you like it's been ice skating. Tasso the cat suddenly leaps onto the table, scattering ink pots in slow motion. One lands upright, painting his tail a scholarly streak of midnight. He now looks like a feline quill. Lucia laughs so hard she snorts wine back into her glass, an efficient recycling system that earns a round of applause. Gaspara declares the cat an honorary member, granting him the title Baron of Marginalia, complete with a wax seal shaped like a fish skeleton. You notice the harpsichord player has switched to a minor key that feels like walking home in socks. The notes soak into the parquet and stay there, pulsing gently. A tiny bell strikes twice somewhere inside the walls. Venice keeps her clocks hidden so time can't escape, and the room exhales in unison, pages rustling like communal wings. Your stanza complete, you fold the swan back into shape, but now it bears a single inked line across its breast, a tattoo of testimony no tide can wash away. Gaspara claps once, no louder than a moth landing, and the circle of chairs turns very slowly, as if the floor itself is a lazy Susan powered by whispers. You're nudged into the seat between Fox Mask and a woman whose veil is stitched from hymnal pages, snippets of Latin flutter whenever she breathes. Lucia takes the chair opposite, eyes sparkling like moonlit broken glass. Pretty, but you sense sharp edges reserved for later. The rule of metaphor is quietly lifted. Now you may speak plainly, provided you season every fourth sentence with a compliment to someone's eyebrows. Eyebrow flattery, you learn, is the Venetian equivalent of tipping, excessive but expected, and best delivered with the sincerity of a cat requesting cream. Fox Mask introduces himself as Ottavio, occasionally, and confesses he's composing a sonnet cycle about barnacles who dream of becoming brooches. Everyone nods as if this is overdue scholarship. The veiled woman's name is Chiara. She trades in rare punctuation and once smuggled a semicolon across the Adriatic, hidden inside a marzipan peach. Gaspara sets a silver hourglass on the table. The sand is dyed midnight blue and falls upward, a quiet rebellion against gravity and bedtime. While the sand climbs, each guest must confess a secret that is not their own. Plausible deniability served as after-dinner mint. Lucia volunteers you first, winking. Tell us something that never happened to someone who almost existed, a request slippery as eel broth. You invent a nobleman who dyed his beard weekly to match the lagoon's mood. The room sighs appreciatively, and someone pockets the idea for future gossip. Chiara's turn. She claims the Doga once commissioned a perfume that smelled exactly like the first page of unopened mail. Half the room takes notes. Tasso pads around the circle, tail still ink-striped, collecting secrets on his fur like static-charged stationery. By morning, he'll be a walking chapbook. The upward sand halts. Gaspara flips the glass and normal gravity resumes, disappointing several hopeful poets who were planning to age backwards. Before conversation can scatter, Lucia leans in. Next, we sail the floating shelves, bring your metaphors, mind the tide. And you realize chairs are optional but wonder is compulsory. Lucia's invitation hangs like a lantern between you. The circle stands in one motion, robes rustling like sleepy pigeons deciding the night still has crumbs to offer. Gaspara lifts a velvet rope you hadn't noticed. Its tassel grazes the parquet, leaving a faint scar of lint that looks, you swear, like a question mark. You follow the poets through a door barely taller than your conscience, downstairs so worn each step sighs like a librarian closing a favorite book. The air cools to cellar temperature secrets. Someone ahead hums a scale that keeps slipping into minor, as if the staircase itself is descending emotionally. At the bottom, a narrow canal kisses the stone threshold. No gondola, just a low black boat with shelves built along its gunwales, books nested like roosting starlings. Luca, the harpsichordist, now wearing a cape of music manuscript, climbs aboard first. Pages flutter from his collar, providing a soundtrack of accidental arpeggios. You're handed a lantern made from a pickled onion jar. The candle inside smells faintly of brine and vinegar, giving every flicker a pickled glow. Mood lighting for preserved thoughts. Tasso leaps onto your lap the moment you sit, tail ink still drying in midnight stripes. He needs your thigh like a baker uncertain about gluten tolerance. Oars push off. The boat glides beneath a brick arch embroidered with salt crystals that glitter like cheap chandeliers, though you'd never insult them out loud. Water laps the shelves just low enough to keep spines dry, but high enough to coax musty perfume from old paper, essence of epilogue with bass notes of mildewed wisdom. Lucia plucks a slim volume bound in algae green leather, letters never mailed to spouses who forgot to leave. She opens it. The pages exhale tobacco and regret. You're invited to read aloud. Your voice starts wobbly, but the acoustics of water and brick cradle each syllable until even your subway dulled vowels sound Venetian velvet. A passage describes a wife who folded her husband's anger into paper boats and set them sailing across the soup. Half the boat snorts, the other half takes notes for future recipes. Mid-sentence, the lantern flickers and you glimpse a face reflected in the water. Yours but softer, as if the canal decided you needed editorial leniency. When you close the book, the boat rocks approvingly. Even the tide offers a polite round of applause, slapping the hull in iambic pentameter. Lucia trades the green volume for a moss-speckled atlas, open to a map of imaginary islands shaped like punctuation marks, an archipelago of ellipses waiting for someone to finish their thought. She runs a finger along the darted shoreline of an island, labeled semicolon reef, whispering that it's the only place where two independent clauses can coexist without quarreling. You ask if people vacation there. She replies only insomniacs and proofreaders, and even they must bring their own conjunctions. Tasso, bored with literary geography, leaps to the highest shelf and knocks over a chapbook of Venetian pickup lines from 1542. Phrases like, "Your beauty eclipses the arsenal," flutter into the canal like flirtatious moths. A gondolier on the parallel canal hears one, laughs, and returns a line about anchors being hearts that learn to stay. The exchange feels like distant Wi-Fi between centuries. Luca strums a chord on his portable harpsichordette, basically a shoebox with dignity. The ripple of notes persuades the lantern flame to shimmy, casting reflections that look like commas doing the tango. You're handed a blank bookmark and told to write a question the water might answer. You pen, "What becomes of ink when it forgets its poem?" and slip it between two soggy pages of an old navigation log. Almost immediately, a bubble rises from the submerged margin and pops with a sound like a tiny librarian saying, "S." The consensus is the lagoon accepts your query, but needs time to research. The boat drifts beneath a low bridge whose underside is papered with broadsides. Public poems glued there by heartbroken gondoliers. One begins, "O walnut of my heart, why so hard to crack?" You laugh too loudly. The echo scurries ahead, ricochets off a palazzo wall, and returns wearing a mask of its own voice, Venice mocking your mirth in surround sound. Lucia produces a silver spoon, dips it into the canal, and lets 3 drops fall onto your bookmark. "Salt seals the contract," she explains. "Water witnesses, ink obliges." Suddenly the tide hiccups, an actual skip beneath the hull, sending a tremor through the shelves. A slim volume falls open at a love poem addressed to tomorrow, signed only G. Gaspara's initial, you realize, and wonder if books here deposit their own secrets into the water, like anonymous bank accounts paying interest in nostalgia. You close the atlas, but not before noticing a tiny island shaped exactly like your thumbprint. The shoreline wavers as if waiting for you to press it into flesh and finalize citizenship. Luca announces it's time to row back before the candle drowns in its own pickle brine. You nod, but secretly you're calculating how late the night bus runs in a city whose streets are made of water and whose timetables are written in tide. The return oar strokes are slower, as if the boat itself is reluctant to rejoin solid ground where stories must wear shoes. You pass beneath the Bridge of Sighs at the exact moment a prisoner's last exhalation from 1602 seems to echo. History's sigh on layaway, still being paid off in tourist photos. Lucia hands you a crust of bread left over from supper. You tear it into commas and flick them into the water, feeding the metaphorical ducks. Tasso supervises from the prow, tail ink now dry but flaking into the canal like black snow. Each speck a punctuation mark the tide will rearrange into new sentences. Ahead, the Rialto hunches like an insomniac camel, its arches lit by torches that flicker in currencies of gold and gossip. Lucia says dawn is still 2 hours away, but Venice keeps a spare dawn folded behind her ear for emergencies. You decide not to ask what constitutes poetic daylight savings. As you dock, a merchant in a velvet nightgown appears, clutching a tray of tiny coffee cups no bigger than thimbles, Venetian espresso, strong enough to make your heart file its own tax return. He offers you one on the house, then winks, but the house charges interest in sleeplessness, which explains why everyone's eyes look like they've been personally polished by insomnia. You sip. The coffee tastes of burnt caramel and revolution, a flavor that makes you want to overthrow at least one bad habit before breakfast. Lucia pays with a couplet she scribbles on his cuff. Your brew awakens stones to sing. May marble dreams your profits bring, he bows, satisfied with currency that won't dent his coin purse. Gaspara is waiting at the top of the steps, wrapped in a cloak the color of almost morning. She informs you the salon has relocated to the rooftop for a moonlit mask. You climb, legs protesting the switch from water to stone, each step a negotiation between buoyancy and gravity, like a sailor learning to walk on paperwork. At the landing, a servant hands you a mask carved from a single sheet of paper-thin cedar. It smells of pencil shavings and childhood tree houses you never built, but meant to. The mask's eyes are cut so wide you can still wear your glasses of wonder. Lucia ties the ribbon, whispering, "Remember, anonymity is just identity on holiday." You push open the door to the roof, and the night inhales you, cool, salted, and humming with masked poets ready to trade their last coherent heartbeat for one perfect stanza. The rooftop greets you like a relative who isn't sure you've grown tall enough for serious hugs. Flagstones cool under socked feet, chimney pots leaning in to eavesdrop. Paper lanterns on strings bob overhead, each painted with a line of poetry that glows when the breeze inflates it. The sky becomes a slow-moving manuscript. Lucia adjusts her mask. Its feathers are actual quills, tips dipped in silver ink that scratches starlight onto the air whenever she turns her head too quickly. Gaspara stands near a copper brazier shaped like a clam. Inside, cedar chips and rosemary burn, sending up curls of scent that taste like oceanic Thanksgiving. A trio of musicians, lute, theorbo, and something that looks suspiciously like a shoebox with strings, strikes up a pavane so lazy it could be filed under horizontal dance. Masked partners pair off. Someone wearing a moon phase mask bows to you, announces their name is Wednesday's uncle, and invites you to join a figure called the Hesitation Waltz, mostly swaying and philosophical shrugs. You comply, counting beats in hushed Venetian, uno, do, tree, and the soft maybe between them where rhythm keeps its options open. Tasso has followed, tail now tipped with silver flecks from Lucia's quill feathers. He weaves between ankles, adding accidental syncopation whenever someone nearly trips. Across the roof, a poet unveils a sonnet written on a scarf. She flutters it so the verses ripple like fabric confessing to the wind. You catch fragments, your collarbone, an anchorage for storms, and feel the line drop into your chest, mooring somewhere private. Wednesday's uncle spins you once, whispers that every rooftop in Venice is technically a ship deck if you believe in architecture hard enough. You decide belief is easier than balance. Between dances, guests trade moonlit truths, statements that must begin with "I might" and end with "but the lagoon knows." I might fold this night into my pocket, but the lagoon knows pockets eventually unseam. Gaspara rings a tiny glass bell, the signal for collective breath. Poets stand still, masks tilted skyward, while the musicians hold one communal chord that trembles like a held yawn. In that hush you hear it, the city's own heartbeat, distant waves slapping stone, shutters kissing frames, a gondola oar knocking once against a pole, Venice keeping imperfect time with your pulse. The chord dissolves, and with it the formal pretense of dancing. Partners drift apart like quotations losing their quotation marks. Gaspara claps twice, softer than moth wings, and announces the midnight wager. Each poet must barter a secret sound for a yet unwritten stanza. You search your pockets for audible contraband. All you find is the breadcrumb of heartbeat leftover from espresso. Lucia saves you by producing a tiny tin box labeled "Sounds I Borrowed from Dreams." Inside, a miniature seashell hums a note between B flat and tomorrow. You offer the shell. Gaspara listens, declares it almost honest, and hands you a blank domino tile, your coupon for one fresh poem, redeemable at dawn. Tasso, never one to miss currency exchange, meows into the brazier. The rosemary flames flare, releasing a crackle that someone pockets as fire's opinion on cats. Wednesday's uncle removes his mask at last, revealing a face as ordinary as unbuttered toast. He explains anonymity tastes better when you've tried the bread. You spot a corner where poets are recording sounds on strips of paper no wider than ribbon. A sigh, a hiccup, the soft pop of a cork surrendering. These ribbons are tied to lantern strings. The rooftop becomes a wind chime of secrets, each breeze playing a confessional chord. Lucia teaches you the Venetian hush, a technique involving teeth, tongue, and a small exhale through the side of your mouth. Half whisper, half yawn, entirely eavesdrop-proof. You practice. The hush slips out, curls around a lantern, and lifts a ribbon of your borrowed dream shell sound into the sky like a kite without string. Gaspara watches, pleased. That one might reach the moon, or at least the attic of someone who still believes in tides, she says, and writes a quick couplet on your sleeve to seal the spell. Meanwhile, the musicians switch to heartbeat tempo, 33 beats per minute, the exact speed of someone falling asleep in a foreign language. Couples sway again, but slower, eyes closed, trading weight and lines of verse in alternating succession. I lean. You listen. We balance. The night nods off. You find yourself counting not steps but breaths, realizing the rooftop is less ship deck than raft, less raft than shared inhalation. When the green water candle from the salon appears, carried by Chiara in a pocket globe, it flickers its final pickled flicker, and you feel the wagered sounds collectively settle, like birds choosing one tree for the night. Chiara sets the spent candle at the brazier's edge, a tiny corpse of light, and the poets form an involuntary semicircle, mourners, at the funeral of a flame that drowned in its own brine. Gaspara produces a silver thimble, scoops a bead of melted wax, drips it onto the back of your hand. It cools into a coin-sized seal bearing the faint impression of an anchor. Proof of tonight's interest, she whispers, redeemable when you need reminding that secrets once chose you as their banker. You pocket the wax anchor, realizing your skin now doubles as stationary. Every pulse is a postmark. Lucia nudges you toward a narrow stair that corkscrews downward into the palazzo's attic. An ascent disguised as descent, Venice's favorite magic trick. The staircase smells of cedar pencils and the ghost of orange peel. Someone has carved tiny couplets into the banister, a handrail of illicit literature. You trace one with your thumb. We climb to fall in love with falling, and wonder if gravity writes poetry on the side. At the bottom, top, of the stair, a trapdoor yawns open into moonlight. You emerge onto a hidden balcony overlooking the Grand Canal, population, reflections, and rumors. Here waits the secret sonnet press, a portable contraption of brass gears and mahogany jaws, small enough to fit in a violin case, yet hungry enough to bite a stanza out of silence. Its operator, a woman called Scribe Luminosa, greets you with ink under every fingernail, each a tiny blackout poem waiting to be read by microscope. She demonstrates. Feed a ribbon of sound paper, your C shall be flat, into the press. Add 1 drop of pickled candle brine, close the jaws, count to the length of a sigh. When she opens it, the paper has become a sonnet, 14 lines, 10 syllables each, smelling faintly of tide and lullaby. The final couplet reads, "What sings inside a shell still dreams of leaving, slash the sea withdraws, but leaves the song still grieving." You feel accused of beauty, flattered into responsibility. Words you bartered have become citizens of literature, complete with passports stamped valid for one dawn. Luminosa hands you the warm page. Ink still shivers, not quite dry, like a heart deciding whether to risk another beat. Below, a lone gondola glides through the reflection of the moon, slicing it neatly into parentheses. Tonight's story bracketed, ready for revision tomorrow. The balcony door creaks behind you, an arthritic yawn of centuries-old wood, and Chiara slips through, veil of hymnal pages fluttering like shy angels who have forgotten the words. She carries a small velvet pouch that clinks like distant wind chimes suffering from hiccups. Inside are movable type letters cast from silverfish proof lead. Luminosa greets her with ink-stained knuckles raised, the printer's salute, equal parts solidarity and stain preview. You're invited to set your own line into the next sonnet. Just 4 words, they warn, before the brass jaws grow impatient. You choose. Salt, Carla, borrowed, morning. Each letter warm from Chiara's pouch, tiny metal citizens queuing for residency on paper. Tasso appears, tail now clean of ink but tipped with wax crumbs. He bats an orphaned E toward the canal, giving the moon a new article to declaim. Luminosa locks the type, cranks the screw, gears hum a lullaby that sounds like a clock falling in love with a heartbeat. Paper slides in, creamy, lamb soft. Then the press kisses it with the weight of history plus 42 pounds per square inch of longing. When she lifts the jaw, ink steams slightly, smelling of hot berries and newly forged gossip. Your 4-word constellation gleams 3rd line down. Chiara tears the sonnet free along perforated silence, folds it into a paper gondola, and sets it on the parapet to dry in moon wind. Lucia produces a stick of sealing wax the color of arterial blood. She melts it with the brazier's reflection somehow, stamps it with the same anchor coin that branded your hand. 1 copy only, she says. Venice prints ephemeral. If you want permanence, memorize before dawn. You read the finished poem aloud. Your voice doesn't echo. Instead, the canal inhales it, stores it beneath reflections for later lending. Somewhere a bell tolls once, not for time but for inventory, the city auditing its collection of stolen voices, checking yours back in. Luminosa packs the press. Chiara pockets leftover syllables. Lucia pockets you. Arm linked through yours, steering you toward the spiral stair. Behind you, the paper gondola lifts, caught by a rogue updraft, and glides across the moon's white lane, Venice accepting delivery of tonight's fragile freight. Down the spiral you twist, each step negotiating between attic stars and cellar whispers, until you spill into a windowed corridor smelling faintly of gunpowder and gardenias. An odd couple on a blind date. Lucia presses a finger to her lips, now sealing silence with silence, and points through the leaded pane, across the cal. The Doge's private garden glows like a rumor someone forgot to hush. Orange trees in silver tubs stand sentinel. Their fruit wears tiny masks of black silk, a citrus masquerade ball no one invited you to. Yet here you are, invitation pressed in wax against your pulse. Chiara produces a key, bronze, toothless, more metaphor than metal, and inserts it into a keyhole that wasn't there a second ago. Venice lends openings to those who travel by poetry. The door sighs open onto night cool grass. You step through, shoes instantly soaked by dew that's been waiting centuries to audition for the role of soft surprise. Lucia plucks a low, hanging leaf, folds it into a whistle, blows a note that loosens the nearest orange. It drops into your palm like a payment for heartbeat services rendered. The peel yields under your thumbnail, releasing a mist of citrus so bright, it nearly reveals every secret you've stored behind your teeth. You sip the segment, sweet, tart, forbidden, and feel time pucker. Somewhere deeper among hedges, a marble bench hosts a pair of loafers, empty, polished, pointed toward the moon, as if their owner ascended barefoot and never bothered coming back down. You wander, orange in hand, until you find a lemon tree whose trunk bears scars, verses carved shallow, healed over into raised braille of longing. One line reads, "I loved you more than republics, less than silence," signed simply G. Again. You trace the G. Sap sticks to your finger, fragrant, sticky as confession, and you wonder how many gardens Gaspara has graffitied with unmailed devotion. Footsteps. Definitely not yours. Crunch gravel behind. You spin, ready to apologize in 3 languages, but it's only Tasso, tail high, carrying what looks suspiciously like the missing left slipper of state. Lucia snatches it, grins. The Doge will blame the butler will blame the cat blames gravity. A diplomatic circle Venice calls Tuesday. You slip the orange peel into your pocket. Evidence, souvenir, bookmark for a chapter that hasn't happened. Then retreat toward the keyless door that's already forgetting you. Back in the corridor, Chiara relocks nothing with the knot key. The garden sighs shut, trees rearranging their shadows so the grass looks untouched, innocence restored like a duvet fluffed. The orange's sweetness lingers on your tongue, a private sunrise you'll smuggle through whatever remains of tonight, proof that even republics can be picked, peeled, and pocketed one segment at a time. The beaked shadow taps the window with a nose like a sad violin. Even the woodpeckers of Venice outsource their percussion to grief. You jump, spilling a crescent of ink across your cuff. Instant midnight that will dry into a constellation shaped vaguely like an apology. Gaspara lifts a vinegar-soaked handkerchief, flapping it like a surrender flag at the battle of bad breath. The room fills with the scent of salad defending itself. "Plague doctor," she mouths, pronouncing each syllable as if it's a vintage that might improve with mispronunciation. The figure outside is draped in gabardine, the color of forgotten statutes. His mask sports spectacles without glass, philosophy without footnotes. He raps again, 3 slow knocks, the meter of a limerick missing its punchline, and the poets freeze mid-metaphor, similes dangling like participles caught with their pants down. Lucia elbows you. Offer him a line of verse. He trades immunity for iambic pentameter, preferably comedic. You panic, reciting the first thing that drips to your tongue. There once was a doctor of gloom / whose nose could rent out a whole room. The beak tilts, approving. Amused. Astigmatic. Then slips a parchment through the cracked window, official prescription. It crows, recommending 1 laugh hourly and a diet of ironic distance. Chiara produces a florin-sized orange peel, presses it into his glove as co-pay. He bows, cloak swirling like a legislature recessing into night. Footsteps recede. Heels clicking Morse that translates loosely to sanitize your metaphors, citizens. The room exhales in collective haiku, 5 syllables of relief, 7 of residual dread, 5 of renewed appetite for risotto. Gaspara sprinkles salt across the sill, old Venetian mouthwash, then pours everyone tiny glasses of Prosecco tinted with elderflower, to antibodies and anapists. You clink, drink, feel the bubbles scrub your bloodstream like polite scrubbing bubbles that apologize while disinfecting your anxiety. Somewhere a bell tolls the plague doctor's exit, or maybe it's just the campanile clearing its throat, embarrassed by history's recurring hiccups. The vinegar cloud lifts like a departing chorus, leaving behind the faint perfume of relieved poets and one reluctant sneeze from Tasso. Gaspara herds everyone toward a side door that hadn't existed at breakfast. It reveals itself only when someone mispronounces "good night" in 3 languages. You follow Lucia down a spiral so narrow your shoulders brush both sides, collecting flakes of paint like receipts for places your body has rented. At the bottom, top, middle of the stair you spill onto the sighing bridge, a modest ark whose stones exhale every secret they've overheard since 1423. The canal below is black as over steeped tea, moonlight floating on it like an oil slick of silvered calm. Lucia produces your earlier poem, creased, salt-stained, still smelling of pickled candle, and nods toward the water, postage due. You unfold the paper, read your own words back to yourself. They sound braver out here, as if darkness were a forgiving editor. Across the parapet, other poets are releasing miniature manuscripts, boats of couplets, paper planes of villanelles, one origami octave that keeps unfolding mid-air like a procrastinating flower. You hesitate. The bridge sighs beneath your palms, a stone parent urging its child to jump into the deep end of memory. Lucia demonstrates. She tears her share of the sonnet in half, drops it. The pieces land like reluctant snow, dissolve into dark without complaint. You mimic her, letting go. The paper lingers an instant, caught by a breeze that feels like someone else's nostalgia, then sinks, canal closing over it like a librarian snapping a book shut. Somewhere downstream a gondolier hums. The tune rises through the arches, braids itself around your discarded syllables, carries them off to destinations unnamed. Tasso watches, tail flicking in Morse, ... for well done, ... for now what? Gaspara's voice floats from the shadows. Every bridge is a stanza break, every water below a margin where footnotes drown. You lean farther, hear your own heartbeat echo off wet stone. Thump thump translated into lapping syllables, maybe, never, ever. Lucia tugs your sleeve. Dawn is still a rumor, but the night shift is clocking out. You leave the bridge still sighing, stones replenishing their lungful of secrets for the next crossing. Back on firm flagstones, the city rearranges itself into a chessboard of alley light and puddle dark. You're a pawn promoted to insomniac night, hopping alleys in L-shaped yawns. Lucia leads you north, south, sideways, until the scent of hot sugar proves geography irrelevant. Destination is wherever pastry survives past midnight. You arrive at a tiny campo where a trumpeter stands on a chimney stack, warming his instrument over a brazier so the brass won't catch cold feet. He lifts the mouthpiece. The first note blares like sunrise arriving early for overtime, then remembers it's still moon hours and softens into silver. Poets scatter across the roofline, boots skittering terracotta tiles older than most nations. Each step lofts a puff of ochre dust that drifts down like history dandruff. Lucia kicks off her shoes, insists rooftops are for barefoot bargains with gravity. You follow, toes negotiating lease terms with ancient clay. The dance is more sway than choreography. Lean balance, pretend the city tilts only 5 degrees, blame any stumbles on architectural enthusiasm. Tasso trots the ridgeline like a tightrope walker who's bribed physics with chin scritches. His tail draws calligraphy against the stars, spelling words you almost know. Gaspara appears, seemingly evaporated from street level, now wearing a cape of night itself, hem-stitched with tiny mirrors that catch trumpet notes and throw them back amplified. Between phrases, the trumpeter inserts bird calls. Seagulls answer, confused but polite, a cross-species jam session paid in crusts and ego. You find a partner wearing a mask shaped like an open book. During turns, you read lines scrawled across the pages, random couplets that synchronize with your heartbeat like subtitles. At the crescendo, everyone stamps twice. Tiles clack like typewriter carriage returns, the city resetting its margin for the next stanza of footsteps. Somewhere below, a resident shouts classic Venetian encouragement, either land softly or write a will in hendecasyllables. Advice you file under later if survival allows. The dance ends not with applause but with collective inhale. Poets stand still, letting moonlight settle on shoulders like stardust dandruff shampooed by silence. You notice the orange peel in your pocket has dried into the shape of a tiny boat, cargo of sweetness shrunk to amulet, proof that even contraband can navigate night if properly seasoned. The rooftop inhales one last trumpet note and exhales a hush thick enough to butter bread. Poets pair off for the duel of epigrams, verbal jousting with blunted wit. Lucia appoints you referee, because foreigners, she claims, are too polite to cheat and too confused to take sides. She hands you a flag made from a rejected stanza. The rules are simple. Insult must sound like affection, compliment must wound the receiver's vanity, and every rhyme must pay rent to the moon in syllables. First contender, Ottavio in fox mask, armed with a quill the size of a rapier. Opponent Chiara, veil fluttering like pages debating which story to tell. Ottavio bows. Your intellect, dear Chiara, is a lantern, so bright it blinds the moth of my intention, yet so fragile I fear a sneeze of doubt. Chiara curtsies. And yours, good fox, is a library in a flood, vast, valuable, and best navigated by gondolas of summary. The rooftop audience uos in 3-part harmony. Tasso provides percussive tail thumps against terracotta, keeping time like a metronome with opinions. You raise the stanza flag. It droops, embarrassed by its own metaphors, so you wave it anyway. Literary honesty counts for something. Round 2 escalates. Chiara compares Ottavio's courage to a souffle in a storm. Impressive rise, inevitable collapse. While he counters her eloquence is a gondola with too many oars, rowing in all directions yet arriving only at applause. Somewhere below, an insomniac resident shouts approval. Give him a subscription. Venice's version of encores, dating back to the printing press. You declare a tie, mostly because both poets are breathless, and the moon looks ready to cash her syllabic rent check. Ottavio and Chiara bow, exchange garlands of rosemary as apology for brilliance. Gaspara produces tiny glasses of chilled Prosecco. Bubbles rise like commas seeking sentences, pop against lips in soft editorial kisses. You sip, realize the duel has left a paper cut on your conscience. Words can indeed wound, but only the polite ones leave tasteful scars. Lucia leans in. Next lesson, how to lose an argument gracefully to a stranger you'll never see again. but the staircase down yawns open before syllabus can be distributed. You pocket the stanza flag. Later it will unfold into a crumpled map of everywhere you should have kept quiet, but for now it serves as souvenir of rooftop civility, scented faintly with trumpet brass and rosemary blood. Down the attic ladder you climb, each rung a note lower on the scale of tired. Your feet now speak only in whole rests. Lucia steers you eastward, though Venice measures direction in perfumes rather than compasses. This way smells of coffee, that of coal smoke, straight ahead of almost dawn. A side canal reveals a sandalo no longer than a sigh, painted the bruised blue of lullabies. Its oarsman is asleep, but rowing, muscle memory moonlighting as transportation. You board. Tasso claims the prow like a figurehead carved by committee, proud, confused, tail announcing departure. Lucia pushes off. Water wraps around hull like a scarf knitted by someone who only knows one stitch. Gentle, repetitive, endless. She begins to hum anise salt, and something that might be lullaby or might be recipe for forgetting how to count. You recline against a cushion that smells of every passenger who ever cried here, brine diluted with borrowed time. Buildings slide past, windows flickering last call candles. Each pane is a miniature stage where someone else's insomnia performs its closing monologue. A gondola glides alongside, its gondolier singing so softly the water itself leans closer to listen. Lucia harmonizes an octave below conversation. You try to join, but your voice comes out folded, so you settle for listening, ears filling like pockets with small change of melody. Above, clouds part just enough to frame the moon like a postage stamp on an envelope addressed, to whom it may concern, night. Tasso curls against your ankle, purring in 6/8 time, boat engine substitute powered by feline contentment quotas. Somewhere a bell tolls once, not for hour but for heart, Venice checking her pulse, confirming city and passengers still share circadian rhythm. Lucia lets the oars drift. Momentum surrenders to current, proving that even journeys occasionally accept unpaid leave. You close eyes, feel lagoon lift and lower you like parentheses cradling a secret too tender for exclamation. Tonight's final sentence slipping toward ellipses. The Sandalo coasts to a whisper stop beside a fondamenta, so narrow, it could be a hyphen between two sighing sentences. Lucia nods toward a crooked doorway lit by a single bulb of butter-colored glass, an eye that never learned to stay awake past midnight. Above the lintel, a sign reads Orologio Infellis in letters that droop like clocks suffering from advanced melancholy. Inside, gears clank the way knees do when centuries skip, stretching exercises. Time here keeps tripping over its own laces. The clockmaker, ancient, aproned, sporting goggles thick enough to fry optimism, greets you with a nod that lasts exactly one misplaced second. He introduces himself as Tempo Scordato, time out of tune, and apologizes for the hour running late. He's been trying to subtract an hour from 3 a.m., but keeps getting 3 a.m. plus regret. Lucia explains his offer. Stop every bell in Venice until sunrise, granting poets a noiseless dawn. Payment must be a memory of sunlight you can live without. You search your mind's photo album, find a childhood beach morning, sunlight on plastic bucket, mother calling lunch, and offer it, feeling generous yet vaguely traitorous. He nods, produces tiny brass tweezers, plucks a filament of gold from thin air, your memory condensed into a thread that glimmers like overcooked nostalgia. He installs the thread into a pocket watch the size of a hazelnut. Gears swallow it with satisfied click, and every bell in the city coughs once, then falls silent. Midnight granted parole. Outside, the hush feels illegal, like a library installed inside a drum. Even Tasso's whiskers stop vibrating, afraid of trespass fines. You walk back to the boat, lighter by one sunbeam, heavier by the knowledge that someone else now owns your past's perfect noon. Lucia squeezes your hand. Sunlight multiplies. You'll find it again in borrowed dawns, she says, though her voice sounds edited for reassurance. Behind you, the clockmaker hums a scale missing its brightest note. Gears chew your memory into seconds that will chime elsewhere, probably in someone else's dream of sandcastles. As the Scandalous glides off, you realize the lagoon reflects a sunrise that hasn't happened yet. Time apologizing in advance for the theft, promising interest, paid in pink and gold IOUs. The hush follows you like a well-trained ghost as you dock beside a library whose windows glow with the sickly gold of overworked bulbs. Lucia calls it Biblioteca Insane, the library that can't sleep. Its bricks absorb caffeine from the air, exhaling it as restless rust. Inside, stacks tower like paper stalagmites, each book breathing at a different pace. Some snore in footnotes, others hyperventilate in marginalia. The librarian, Signora Yawn, greets you with a finger to her lips, both a shush and a confession that she too is afraid of loud thoughts. She explains the haunting at 3 a.m. volumes rearrange themselves by emotional temperature, heartbreak near the radiators, comedy by the drafty door. You're invited to patrol. Tasso accepts the role of honorary bookmark, tale serving as placeholder for any narrative that loses its page. Footsteps echo like slow-motion tap dancing. Each aisle exhales a different decade, mustard gas of the 10s, jazz of the 20s, rationed silence of the 40s. In foreign languages, an Italian-German dictionary flips open, whispering hybrid words that taste like sauerkraut sprinkled with oregano. Suddenly, a crash. Philosophy and self-help have collided, creating an aisle of books insisting they both do and do not need therapy. You separate Hegel from healing your inner child. They resist, pages fluttering like agitated pigeons, until Tasso hisses the intellectual equivalent of enough. Signora Yawn offers earplugs made of shredded index cards. You decline, preferring to eavesdrop on literature gossiping about its authors. Lucia finds a pop-up book of Venetian sunsets. Every time she turns a page, the room blushes orange, then remembers it's midnight and fades. At the stroke of 317, a minute invented by insomniacs, every spine aligns facing east, as if praying to a god of margins. You place your wax-sealed sonnet on the central desk. Books lean closer, inhaling fresh ink like oxygen masks on a flight to morning. Signora Yawn yawns, finally, and the stacks settle, murmuring lullabies in footnote Latin. You tiptoe out, leaving Tasso to referee any further semantic shenanigans until sunrise clocks in. Outside, the hush has thickened into a velvet blanket the color of almost morning. Even the fog checks its pockets for loose sunbeams and comes up empty-handed. Lucia steers you toward Campo della Bragora, where paper lanterns, each the size of a sigh, wait like introverted stars afraid of heights. Signora Yawn has gifted you a tiny lantern blank as unwritten gossip. She claims if you release a wish poem into the sky, the night will edit it for clarity. You ink your wish. Let the memory I traded weigh less than the dawn I'm borrowing. The paper curls, embarrassed by sincerity. Around you, poets light their lanterns with matches struck on each other's wit. Flames bloom like footnotes finally promoted to main text. Tasso arrives wearing a collar of tinsel someone repurposed from a failed Christmas sonnet. He purrs, and the vibration rattles a rhyme loose from your throat. One by one, lanterns ascend. Slow motion exclamation marks seeking sentences in the sky. Yours lifts, hesitates, catches an updraft shaped like your mother's lullaby, then stalls on the weather vane of San Giovanni, undecided between coming true and fact-checking reality. Lucia laughs. Some wishes need a second draft. Dawn will workshop it, and pockets the remaining match as proof of attempted illumination. A gondolier on the nearby canal salutes the airborne fleet. His oar writes ripples that translate loosely to bon voyage, paper souls. The trumpeter from the rooftop appears, now playing a muted lullaby into the fog. Notes land on lantern tops like passengers hitching rides to constellation meetings. You feel the traded sunlight, missing from your past, flicker somewhere inside the ascending paper, ballast converted to ballad. Gaspara materializes. She does that, and hands you a tiny bell. Ring once when you're ready for tomorrow. She'll forward any messages the weather vane can't deliver. You tuck the bell into the same pocket as the dried orange peel. Citrus and possibility jingle softly whenever you breathe. Lanterns fade into bruise-colored distance, taking your indecision with them. The Campo exhales, relieved to be ground-bound again, and you realize morning is now a committee of one, waiting for your signature on the minutes. Gaspara lifts her hand, as if conducting an orchestra only she can hear. The poets form a loose semicircle around a stone wellhead worn smooth by centuries of thirst and gossip. She produces a single glass, Murano cranberry red, thin as a rumor, and fills it from a pitcher that wasn't there a moment ago. "This is the parting glass," she says. "It holds exactly one swallow of tomorrow. Sip, and tonight we'll invoice you for whatever you still owe." You expect wine, but the liquid smells of Tide and first page ink, tastes like closing credits sweetened with a teaspoon of almost dawn. One by one, voices rise in a canzonet whose rhyme scheme spells farewell in every language that has ever borrowed loneliness. When your turn comes, the glass is warm from strangers' palms. You drink, feel the swallow travel down like a bookmark sliding into place, noting where you paused reality. Lucia sings harmony an octave below conversation, her final note landing on your shoulder, nesting there like a pigeon who's decided your future needs constant cooing. Tasso receives an honorary sprig of rosemary, symbol of remembrance and feline breath freshener. He accepts with regal indifference, then chews it like a stanza. Instruments quiet. Even the lute player sets his fingers down like chopsticks after a meal of melody. Gaspara recites last lines not her own. "We were here. We were almost on time. We leave the city lovelier by the width of one sigh." You exhale, contributing yours. The well catches it, echoes back a softer version, edited for content and length. Handshakes become embraces. Embraces become back pats that translate to remember me when you remember yourself remembering Venice. Lucia links arms, steers you toward the landing where a ferry waits, fog already knitting mittens around its prow. Behind you, lanterns dim like footlights bowing to an empty house. The Campo shrinks in perspective, a stage set struck by stager hands who work exclusively in moonlight. You board. The boat pushes off, parting water the way a book parts reader, reluctant, gentle, already rehearsing the next chapter you'll swear was written just for you. Fog folds over the lagoon like a duvet too tired to decide which side is up. The ferry nudges through cotton-muffled darkness that swallows oar splash and spits back whispers. Lucia sits beside you, cloak wrapped lighthouse tight. Her profile flickers between person and rumor, each breath a lighthouse beam searching for coastline that has clocked out early. Tasso curls on your lap, purr reduced to taximeter clicks. each vibration a tiny receipt for miles of night traveled. Gondolier hums under his breath, song so soft it could be heartbeat of someone you haven't met yet. Lyrics dissolve into mist before you can file them under future nostalgia. Across the water, a palazzo window glows butter yellow. Silhouette of a woman practices slow-motion tai chi with an invisible cat. Movements sync with your ferry's rock until both crafts share a private tempo. You wave. She waves back, gesture smudged by fog into watery calligraphy, ink that will evaporate before the page is named. Lucia slips something into your pocket, the domino tile from the duel, now warm as toast that's been buttered with anticipation. On its back, she's inked coordinates that smell of almost dawn. For when you need to return without a map, she says, voice pitched low enough to avoid waking the echoes. Fog thickens, erasing stern, bow, even the idea of shore. You float inside a parenthesis that hasn't decided which sentence it belongs to. Tasso's whiskers twitch, radar for land or maybe for breakfast. Either way, confidence outweighs visibility. Somewhere ahead, a bellboy tongues the mist. Single note repeating like a stutter that's learned patience. Each clang travels through water, up the hull into your ribs, tuning heartbeat to maritime lullaby. You realize conversations have ceased. Even the gondolier's hum has clocked out, leaving only the sound of boat knitting fog into scarves that smell of salt and unpaid overtime. Lucia leans her head on your shoulder, borrowed pillow, interest payable in dreams. Her hair smells of anise and rooftops and the part of night that never learned to be morning. You close eyes, feel ferry dissolve until only pulse and paddle remain, two metronomes arguing over who keeps slower time. When you open them again, mist peels back like a theater curtain revealing the landing. Wooden, familiar, waiting as if it had never stopped expecting your feet to translate fog into footsteps. The ferry kisses the dock with a sound like a librarian closing the final cover, soft, definitive dust motes of fog drifting off the page. Lucia steps ashore first, then turns, offers a hand not for rescue, but for ceremony, closing the parentheses the lagoon opened hours ago. Tasso stretches, yawns a small rosette of steam, and trots off toward shadows that rearrange themselves into the shape of an almost morning cat door. You follow, shoes finding familiar cobblestones the way a bookmark finds its groove. No hesitation, just the satisfaction of continuity. Street lamps blink off one by one, each surrendering with a tiny pop that feels like applause from an audience too polite to encore. Gaspara's voice arrives before she does, carried on the last wisp of canal breeze. Remember, the city keeps a spare key under your pillow. Return any time the lock forgets you. She herself appears only as echo, boot heels rounding a corner you can't see, trailing rosemary scent and the faint rustle of pages that haven't decided whether to be wings. Lucia walks you to the campo where your borrowed cloak, still smelling of cloves, cigar, and rooftop trumpet, is returned to the statue of a saint who'd rather remain anonymous. The saint's stone hand accepts the fabric with the resignation of someone used to being draped in strangers' nights. For a moment, the marble looks almost warm. You reach into your pocket, the wax anchor, the domino tile, the dried orange peel, artifacts of a night you bartered piece by piece for metaphors. Arranged on a doorstep, they look like a museum exhibit titled Temporary Owner of Venice, hours 10 p.m. Almost dawn. Lucia produces the final item, a tiny glass bell no bigger than a thimble. She rings it once, not for goodbye, but for see you in parentheses. The note inside the bell, rolled so tight only moonlight can read it, says, all debts paid, all metaphors returned, all footsteps forgiven for trespassing on water. You tuck it behind your ear, where it hangs like an earring that whispers whenever the wind needs an alibi. She turns, cloak dissolving into alley dark. You don't follow. Some exits are meant to be solo, like final chords that prefer not to echo. Behind you, the first real bird of morning clears its throat. You realize the city has already started editing tonight into past tense, and you, lucky borrower, have been granted footnote status. Small, parenthetical, forever italicized in Venetian memory. Dawn's first photocopy of light slides beneath the clouds, pale enough to read by but too shy to sign its name. You wander inland, following the smell of crushed herbs and yesterday's rain until a wooden sign, painted with a nose sniffing a rose, creaks above a doorway. Inside, walls of tiny drawers, each labeled in fountain pen cursive, first bicycle ride, grandmother's handkerchief, locker room victory, 1994. The apothecary of lost smells bows, an aproned man whose spectacles magnify his nostrils to cathedral proportions. He offers trade, one authentic memory of sunlight for any scent you've misplaced. You hand over the beach noon you traded to the clockmaker, figuring second-hand sunshine still warms. He tweezes a filament of gold from your palm, drops it into a thimble-sized alembic, swirls. The room blooms with sunscreen, hot sand, and the plastic bucket tang of childhood. In return, you request the aroma of your first bicycle, rubber tire, chipped paint, the freedom of training wheels newly divorced. He opens drawer 14B, uncorks a vial. Suddenly you're 7, wobbling down an alley that smells of asphalt and possibility, training wheels clattering like tambourines of independence. You pocket the vial corked with a tiny bicycle bell that tinkles when you walk, and immediately feel lighter, as if nostalgia had calorie weight. Behind you, a woman trades the scent of hospital antiseptic for her father's pipe smoke. The transaction ends in quiet tears that smell of both. Tasso sniffs a drawer marked Fish Market, 1623, sneezes out a perfectly preserved anchovy scale, history's business card. The apothecary gifts you a loyalty card. Buy 9 lost cents, 10th one free, void if memory's water soluble. You promise to return, though you're unsure which smell you'll miss next. Perhaps the perfume of almost dawn, still clinging to your collar like a tourist reluctant to check out. Stepping back into the alley, the city smells different. Every breath is a loan from someone else's past, interest payable in future sighs. You snap the vial open for one experimental huff. Bicycle wheels spin somewhere inside your ribs, chain clicking like a metronome set to keep going. Venice, already scented with salt and old decisions, now carries a top note of rubber and childhood velocity. Proof you've brought new gears to the labyrinth, and they fit. You're still wheeling the ghost of a bicycle inside your chest when a seagull the size of overdue library taxes lands on a mooring post, wings flapping grammar. It eyes the vial in your pocket, cocks its head and speaks. Perfect enjambment. Nice meter, kid, but the rhyme scheme owes me royalties. Before you can ask whether birds accept payment in breadcrumbs or existential dread, it snatches the folded sonnet you carried from the rooftop, now dried and slightly salted, and takes off. You chase along the fondamenta, footsteps clacking like typewriter carriage returns, while Tasso provides commentary in tail flicks translated as this is why humans can't have nice metaphors. The gull perches on a wrought iron lantern, unfolds the paper with one claw, and recites your line about collarbone anchorages. adding a caesura mid-air for dramatic swoop. A small crowd of poets gathers, applauding in hushed couplets. Someone tosses the bird a sardine coupon, which it accepts with a bow worthy of opening night. Lucia laughs so hard she leans against a palazzo wall, triggering a motion sensor light that blinks in Morse. Applause. You demand the sonnet back. The gull counters with a contract written in squid ink on a lettuce leaf. Recite at the annual Lagoon Lit Fest or face plagiarism charges in the Court of Turns. Negotiation ensues. You offer the bicycle scent vial, 1 puff for the bird, 2 for you, agreeing to share authorship under the pen name Gulliver Verses. The gull inhales childhood rubber, eyes glaze nostalgic, and drops the paper like a mic. Your poem flutters down, slightly beak-creased but officially peer-reviewed by ornithology. Tasso glares avian disdain, tail now shaped like a question mark, asking why felines never get agent representation. You pocket the vial -1 huff, feeling strangely validated. Even seabirds audit syllables here. Venice runs on literary taxes paid in fish and ego. The gull lifts off, wingbeats punctuating the air with white space. It calls back a final edit. Next time, fewer adjectives, more squid. Poets disperse, already incorporating the incident into villanelles about maritime intellectual property. Lucia steers you onward, reminding that every citizen, fur, feather, or foot, holds fractional copyright in the city's ongoing stanza. Royalties accrue in the form of stories you'll retell until memory files for bankruptcy. You nod, already calculating exchange rates. 1 sardine equals 1 simile. 1 gull review equals 1 ego inflation. 1 Venice night equals infinite unpaid meter. You leave the gull negotiated spotlight and duck into a cal so slim even echoes walk single file. Lucia says it leads to the only mirror that diets on reflections. The palazzo hallway smells of beeswax and unresolved arguments. Chandeliers sway like pendulums trying to vote on when midnight should officially resign. Tasso pads ahead, tail now a metronome set to curious adagio, until you reach a powder room door painted the color of wet peonies. Inside, 1 mirror stands alone, frame carved with tiny open mouths, allegedly to taste the images it swallows. Lucia warns, look too long and it keeps a thumbnail. Most people lose their awkward high school years, but you can bargain. You peer. The glass shows you at 7, wobbling on that same bicycle now scented in your pocket. Reflection smells faintly of rubber and velocity. The mirror ripples, hungry. The mouth carvings smack wooden lips, requesting dessert in the form of embarrassing memories. You offer the mirror yesterday's stumble on the ferry, public, harmless, already reviewed by seagull critics. It accepts. Your on-screen image ages 2 years smoother, teenage acne erased like a badly edited metaphor. Lucia whispers encouragement. Negotiate up. Offer the memory of losing house keys in 2012. It's got sentimental value but 0 utility. You do. The mirror burps a soft focus lens, returns your reflection wearing a smile you haven't practiced since the before times. Tasso, impatient, offers his own reflection. Tail curved into a perfect question mark. The mirror declines, claiming feline smugness is too calorie-dense. Instead, it steals Tasso's shadow for 3 heartbeats, returning it slightly longer, proof that even darkness can get a Venice makeover. You step back, lighter by 2 forgettable anxieties, heavier by the knowledge that self-editing is literally on the house here. Lucia pockets a sliver of reflected moonlight for later exposure. and you exit before the mirror develops dessert cravings for childhood traumas still under copyright. Outside, your bicycle scent vial now smells faintly of peonies too, cross-pollination of memory and mirror, proof that Venice lets even your past redecorate if you leave it unattended. The corridor spits you onto a fundamenta where the hour has liquefied into 4 a.m. That liminal syrup between yesterday's footnote and tomorrow's headline. A clavichord sits unattended on the pavement, legs balanced on 2 cobblestones and one sleeping dog who snores in C major. Lucia whispers the legend, play one regret, forget it. The instrument keeps the memory as sheet music, tempo marked, lento, con guilt. You hesitate. Your catalogue of regrets is embarrassingly overstocked, but settle on the day you laughed at a friend's lisp in 5th grade. Keys are yellowed like old teeth. You press, chord wavers, regret seeps out of your fingertips like ink diluted by contrition. The dog shifts to a minor, providing baseline empathy while Tasso supervises, tail flicking time signature changes. As the final note decays, the memory evaporates. No fireworks, just the gentle click of a mental door closing on a room you'll never re-enter. Instantly, you feel lighter, as if conscience had calorie weight and you just dropped a guilt pound. Lucia follows with her own tune. She sacrifices the memory of leaving love letters unsent. The clavichord inhales them, spits out a trill that smells of sealing wax and almost. A passerby requests an encore, pays with a marble button for luck in future apologies. You pocket it, already lighter by 2 burdens. The instrument, now fed, begins to play itself. An etude composed of collective regrets, melody beautiful enough to justify every mistake that funded it. You listen, realize the tune is catchier than any hit you've hummed. Venice has turned remorse into earworm, ensuring forgetting is refundable only in harmony. Tasso, bored, steps on bass notes. The clavichord accepts feline improvisation, transposing guilt into something vaguely jazzy. Dawn's first photocopy brightens the canal. The dog wakes, stretches, pads off carrying the last chord in his collar. He'll deliver it to someone still asleep. You leave the instrument ticking like a cooled conscience, melody dissipating into morning traffic of gulls and delivery boats. Proof that even errors can graduate to background music if arranged prettily enough. You follow the dog's tail cadence until the rialto yawns into view, stone humps arching like a camel who's misplaced one vertebra and hopes no one counts. Lucia points. A single marble step is missing, a gap the shape of a missing tooth in an otherwise confident bite. Legend says the step eloped with a troubadour in 1387. They currently run a small tavern in Dalmatia serving fermented ballads. Locals step over the void without looking, muscle memory written in calf muscle, the city's longest-running inside joke. You hesitate, foot hovering like a shy question mark. The bridge seems to shrug, jump, or compose an ode to indecision, your call. You opt for poetry, offer a haiku on the harp. Missing step sings air, footfall pauses mid-sentence, bridge completes itself. Lucia applauds. Tasso contributes a tail flick semicolon. A passing merchant drops a coin into your palm for unsolicited architecture consultancy. You leap. For an instant gravity forgets your name, then remembers with polite embarrassment, setting you down intact but lightly billed. On the far side, an elderly woman sells postcards of the missing step, each photo carefully cropped to include the absence, price slightly higher for negative space. You buy one, scribble your haiku on the back, drop it into the postal slit labeled destinations that haven't happened yet. A boy with a toy boat offers to sail your card down the canal to the step's alleged lover. You pay him in the marble button from the clavichord. Luck should travel. Behind you, the bridge settles, content with its one empty socket, proof that even monuments need a little mystery to chew. Lucia whispers, Venice keeps its gaps on purpose. Without them, where would stories insert their feet? You nod, pocket the remaining void, feel it clink against domino coordinates. Absence negotiating with possibility for joint custody of your next step. From the bridge's gap, you step into a campo that smells of warm brass and candle stubs. An aroma part church, part locksmith, entirely conspiratorial. A procession approaches, hundreds of spent candles, wicks bowed like tired ballerinas, marching on tiny ceramic wheels toward the arsenale. Their leader, a tallow torch with a voice like melted violin, shouts slogans. Shorter nights, longer wicks, equal burning rights for all lengths. Lucia explains it's the annual candle stub rebellion. They demand the city extinguish curfew and adopt a 25-hour-day union rules. You're handed a placard reading, Wicks Unite, flame is limiting. Tasso immediately claims it as a scratching post, adding feline endorsement. A poet near you composes an epic in real time, each stanza ending with a demand for overtime wax. The crowd chants refrains that sound suspiciously like lullabies played backwards. I march beside a votive candle who claims to have illuminated a duke's deathbed confession. It wants hazard pay and a museum display. You negotiate on their behalf, offering the city's reflection in the canal as collateral, liquid assets, literally. The Council of Torches votes to accept marble buttons, luck, orange peels, fragrance, and one haiku yours about the missing step as symbolic currency. We reach the arsenale gates. Guards, half asleep, allow entry after receiving complimentary nightlights, bribery scented of beeswax and nostalgia. Inside, foundries glow. Candle stubs line up to be recast into bigger, better, longer burning versions of themselves. Socialist rebirth by fire. You tip your vial of bicycle sent into the vat. The new candles emerge smelling of rubber and velocity, perfect for insomniac cyclists. The leader torch thanks you, presents a commemorative candle the size of a fountain pen, for rewriting darkness in portable installments. You pocket it, feel the city's wick now shares joint custody with your pocket, proof you've joined a union of perpetual partial light. Walking home, every window flickers with fresh, overtime-approved flames. Venice glows like a manuscript that finally negotiated better working conditions for its vowels. The pen-sized candle warms your pocket like a pet humming lullabies in Fahrenheit. Lucia steers you toward a Sotto Portigo where bookbinder's lamp burns butter yellow. Inside, a craftsman with magnifying monocle waits beside a pillow stuffed with loose pages. He introduces himself as Morphy Quaderno, specialist in binding dreams. Hardcover or paperback, gilt edges optional, ISBN negotiable. Rule nap on the pillow, he records whatever drifts out. Payment is the index. He keeps it, you keep the dream. You recline, feel ink drowsy. The pillow smells of lavender and footnotes. Sleep tiptoes, clubs you with a soft semicolon. Scenes spill. Bicycle, gull, missing step, clockmaker's stolen sunlight. All swirling into one illuminated manuscript. Morphy's quill scratches like mice translating Shakespeare. Pages stack, each stamped with tiny bicycle bells and seagull edits. You wake to a neat octavo volume titled Velocipede of Lagoon, annotated. He offers the book. You reach for index. He coughs, reminds you of contractual fine print. Indices are his currency, nostalgia is yours. You flip anyway. No index, just blank space where page numbers should be. Nightmares, he admits, escaped during proofreading. Lucia buys you a miniature bookshelf carved from a single violin bridge. It stands 3 inches tall, resonant enough to hum when you turn pages. Tasso claims the empty index slot, curls around the book, tail providing provisional table of contents, purr, twitch, yawn, repeat. Morphe gifts the missing index page pressed into a paper-thin wafer. Eat when you need to remember what you forgot to fear. You pocket wafer, feel lighter, bibliophile on a low index diet. Outside, dawn's first courier pigeon drops a note. Dream received, invoice for sunrise sent separately. You tuck the dream book under your arm, bicycle candle above your ear, and realize you're now a walking library of unauthorized autobiography, overdue fines payable in future naps. The alley exhales glue steam and the sigh of torn silk as you duck beneath a lintel embroidered with needle-thin mottos. Stitch the lie you wish to keep. Inside, an old woman, Signora Mashera, sits surrounded by masks in every stage of heartbreak, cracked porcelain, frayed velvet, sequins holding on like glittery scabs. She beckons with scissors whose blades are half-moons of patina, snip, snip, the sound of punctuation correcting faces. Lucia explains, each mask arrived torn after Carnival, carrying lies told at midnight, elastics snapped under weight of false grins. Signora's job is transplant surgery, harvest a fib from one, graft it onto another, recycle deception into wearable poetry. You hand her your reflection mirror peony scent. She dabs it on a harlequin, whose tear is actually a smuggled compliment. Tasso offers a whisker, premium thread for stitching subtlety. In return, he demands a domino mask sized for feline burglary of hearts. Signora snips your sleeve, removes a thread of I'm fine you told the ferryman. She sews it into a columbina now labeled authentic indifference, lightly used. Payment, 1 confession. You admit you still don't know if you're traveler or tourist. She nods, files the confession under pending identity, do not iron. Lucia receives a new half-smile, stitched from a banker's promise and a poet's maybe. Fits her like ambiguity tailored. Behind you, shelves labeled future lies stand empty, awaiting next season's fashions. Venice, after all, prefers its honesty off the rack, its deceit haute couture. You pocket the peony-scented domino. It pulses against your fingers like a heartbeat practicing alibi. Outside, you try the mask on. Suddenly compliments taste like cardboard, insults like meringue. Language reverses polarity, proving Signora's warranty valid for 1 lunar cycle. Lucia advises removal before breakfast. Eggs Benedict shouldn't apologize for existing, she says, tucking her own new smile into a pocket already crowded with metaphors. You obey, but keep the altered peony aroma. Proof that even your past can be retailored, seams let out, lies taken in at the waist. Back on the Fondamenta, the lagoon smells of outgoing tide and incoming invoices. The ferryman from your first crossing waves you aboard, palm open for payment in the currency of narrative. You offer the dream book's title page. He nods, folds it into a paper boat, sets it between his teeth like a nautical bookmark. Fare accepted, he asks for a story with wheel reverbs and gull edits. So you recount the orange you stole in the Doge's garden, how it tasted of forbidden sunrise and marble dust. He listens, rowing so slowly the water itself forgets to ripple. When you finish, he flips the page boat into the canal, where it sails off recruiting plot lines for future passengers. Tasso supervises from the gunwale, Tail sketching footnotes on the manuscript of Tide. Halfway across, the boatman produces a receipt, a marble button identical to the one you paid the boy at Rialto. Venice's economy runs on circulating luck. You pocket it, realizing currency here is just memory wearing a disguise and commuting between pockets. At the landing, he gifts you the oar's reflection, for when land gets too definite, and helps you ashore as if concluding a paragraph. Behind you, the ferry dissolves into fog like a sentence ending with an ellipsis that's too polite to stop. You turn toward the alley of accommodations, boots clacking Morse for almost home, whatever home is tonight. Lucia hangs back, lets you walk solo. Some exits require the illusion of autonomy. Curtain falls cleaner that way. Street lamps blink off one by one, each pop a tiny copy editor deleting exclamation points from night. In your pocket, objects convene: wax anchor, domino tile, marble button, peony mask, bicycle candle, like Scrabble tiles spelling departure, but make it poetry. You climb the stairs to your room, key turning with the soft complaint of metal that knows it's guarding temporary dreams. Window open, you hear the lagoon sigh, same sigh as the bridge, as the gull, as the bookbinder. Venice closing one giant parenthesis around you, whispering, see you in footnotes. Your room is a pocket watch someone left open, moon dust on the quilt, the faint tick of a city that refuses to wind down. You set the dream book on the nightstand. Its pages exhale once, as if relieved to be horizontal, then settle into soft, snoring print. Tasso claims the windowsill, tail hanging like a bookmark into the night, tipping every star it brushes. From the canal rises a figure draped in seaweed robes, collar of kelp, trident of driftwood, the tide's tax collector making house calls for unpaid laughter. You owe one giggle, remitted earlier to the candle union. He checks his ledger. Shell has hinged with silver fish hooks, and nods, satisfied. As receipt, he presses a single drop of brine onto your thumbnail. It dries into a crystal that itches whenever someone nearby withholds joy. Lucia, across the alley, flicks her light twice, signal that her accounts are square, insomnia prepaid. You close shutters, the drop of tide tingles, reminding you civic duty includes smiling at strangers even when metaphors are overdrawn. In bed, objects in pockets organize a labor union. The wax anchor demands shorter shifts, the marble button petitions for hazard pay against loss. You negotiate, promise each artifact a stanza in tomorrow's retelling, and they settle, muttering footnote clauses. Sleep arrives wearing the mask menders half smile, carrying a lullaby composed entirely of hushed bells, pickled candle smoke, and the sandalow's last rocking. You drift, city rocking beneath like a cradle made of water and archived time. Somewhere a bellboy counts your heartbeats, keeping ledger balanced. Last awareness, the dream book on the nightstand turns its own page, index still blank, nightmares still at large, but tonight the story is enough. Sleep unpins its wings, but only halfway, enough to glide, not enough to leave the room. The dream book crackles. A page lifts, releasing a moth the color of footnotes. It lands on your thumbnail crystal, drinks the dried brine, and unfolds into a miniature map, the palazzo of perpetual drafts, tonight's unscheduled detour. Tasso yawns approval, jumps to the carpet, tail drawing arrow symbols that glow like breadcrumbs made of moon dust. You follow, barefoot, down stairs that descend by climbing, Venice's favorite contradiction. The palazzo door stands ajar, breathing. Each exhale smells of old letters and pencil shavings. Inhale tastes like anticipation left too long in the cellar. Inside, corridors telescope, shrink, sidestep. Walls rearrange like shy curtains caught gossiping about load-bearing secrets. A draft circles your ankles, tugging the hem of your nightshirt toward a room where wallpaper is printed with your own unfinished sentences. You spot one. I meant to say the orange tasted of. The line quivers, embarrassed by its cliffhanger. Lucia appears, maybe real, maybe draft made, holding a quill carved from the same cedar as your childhood pencil. She offers it like a key. You write the missing word, permission. The wall exhales, seems close. Corridor straightens like a spine after confession. Drafts collect into a breeze that smells of newly sanded time. It lifts the dream book's blank index, folds it into a paper plane, and launches it toward an open window. You watch your unindexed nightmares fly off to apply for citizenship in someone else's insomnia. Tasso purrs, sound vibrating floorboards into a heartbeat. The palazzo decides you're tenant, not trespasser, and dims its drafts to a civilized sigh. Exit appears where entry had been. You step through, carrying only the cedar-scented aftertaste of sentences you've finally finished paying rent on. Back in bed, the dream book lies flat, one page heavier. Index still gone but no longer missed. Proof that some things edit themselves once you give them a drafty room to breathe. Morning leaks in sideways, a shy tenant slipping notes under every shutter. Rent due, one yawn, payable in stretch. You surface slow, feeling the bed rock as if the lagoon had moved upstairs overnight to sleep on the rug. Tasso is gone. In his place, a single whisker curled into a treble clef, signature of a cat who charges by the beat. On the pillow rests the librarian's earplug wafer, shredded index cards pressed into a communion disc of forgotten cross references. You eat it, dry papier-mâché tasting faintly of see also, dreams deferred. Instantly, every lost page number in Venice lines up inside your head, polite as schoolchildren on a fire drill. Downstairs, the landlady has left coffee that smells of brass lamps and unresolved plots. You sip, ink stirred, and the cup rings like a tiny bell. Lucia appears in the doorway wearing dawn like a stole, pink, reluctant, already late for rehearsal. She hands you a final artifact, the glass bell from the rooftop, now cracked in a hairline shaped like the Grand Canal. Broken maps are more honest, she says. You pocket it. The fracture tinkles whenever you breathe, keeping time with the marble button's luck and the wax anchor's residual tide. Outside, seagulls argue over copyright on yesterday's echoes. One drops a feather that lands perfectly between pages of the dream book, bookmark by committee. You close the volume. The feather releases a last scent, rooftop trumpet, pickled candle, bicycle rubber, and the faintest peony of tailored lies. Venice distilled into one inhalation. Footsteps clack toward the vaporetto. Each cobblestone offers a rebate of memory if you agree to leave quietly. You comply, carrying less than you arrived with, one traded noon, one indexed nightmare, one edited reflection, baggage light enough to qualify as footnote. Behind you, the city exhales, already rehearsing tonight's insertions, new poets, new metaphors, new oranges to steal. You don't wave. Venice prefers ellipsis to exclamation. The ferry accepts your silence as fair, and the lagoon closes the parentheses behind you, softly, punctually, forever italicized. The vaporetto noses west, engine muttering in blank verse. You stand at the rail clutching a ticket made of yesterday's tide. Fog folds the city into an envelope addressed somewhere else. Each wake line is a postscript the lagoon keeps appending. Lucia stays ashore. Small wave, smaller smile, smallest bell crack, glinting in her pocket like a promise on half-pay. Tasso has defected to a window ledge of Libreria Insane. Tale already cataloguing new drafts of insomnia for the next borrower. You face forward, but Venice insists on reflection. Palazzi shrink into commas between waves. The campanile becomes an exclamation mark slowly lowered to whisper. The sea takes the dream book's missing index and spreads it like glitter. Each blank page number now a sparkle of uncounted futures. You inventory cargo, wax anchor, still salty, marble button, still lucky, cracked bell, still honest, peony mask, still fibbing gently, bicycle candle, still wheeling through scent. They jingle like a pocket-sized archive whenever the boat hits a ripple, keeping time with your pulse, now synced to 3 a.m. Venetian savings time. A gull circles, possibly the same critic who demanded squid ink royalties. It eyes you, decides your story arc concluded satisfactorily, wings off to edit fresher manuscripts. Sunrise finally clocks in, punching the sky's timecard pink. The city you're leaving glows like a book snapped shut, spine creased, pages warm, ending acceptable. You breathe the last of orange peel dawn, taste salt, coffee, and the faint vinegar of goodbye masquerading as hello somewhere else. The ferry rounds a bend. Venice slips below the horizon's page break, but you feel it footnoting your heartbeat, bibliography style. See also night, stolen. See also metaphors, unpaid. Somewhere inside, the blank index flutters, ready to be filled by the next city, next borrowed sunlight, next parentheses waiting for you to step inside and italicize. You smile, cracked bell tinkling agreement. Every departure is just a stanza break before the next canto begins. The boat docks at Trendsetters, where land feels almost rude after so much liquid politeness. You step ashore. Gravity renegotiates your ankles, signs a new contract in small print about knees and regret. Behind, the lagoon folds its manuscript, but you keep hearing page turns, water lapping corrections onto every future footstep. Train station coffee costs €3 and 1 marble button. You pay with the luck you no longer need, since fortune now travels in sentences. The barrister stamps your receipt with a tiny anchor, Venice's loyalty program, redeemable for 1 return sigh whenever you're ready. You pocket the warm paper, ink still wet, smelling of overheated milk and the faintest pickled candle, proof the city's bibliography follows you. Platform announcement crackles like a librarian clearing her throat, next service to somewhere else, calling it metaphor, almost, and dawn. You board, find a seat by the window, place the cracked bell on the sill. Fracture catches sunrise and drips canal light across your wrist. The dream book rides your lap, spine relaxed, confident its index will grow back once you feed it new geographies. As the train slides forward, you taste orange peel between teeth. Last souvenir of forbidden citrus, sweet, tart, statute of limitations expired. Fields blur into first drafts of countryside. Every cow is a lazy metaphor grazing, waiting for someone to insert them into a stanza. You close eyes, count heartbeat, 1 bell tinkle per second, Venice time, currency you can spend anywhere night needs translating. Behind your eyelids, the city writes itself onto darkness. Footnotes tap dance, gulls edit, clocks refund stolen sunlight in installments of pink. You let it happen, knowing every future bedtime can summon the same lullaby, salt, ink, trumpet, peony, bicycle, bell. Train races the horizon. Venice shrinks to a parenthesis in the rear view mirror, but the story inside remains wide open, waiting for your next breath to continue the sentence. The train exhales into open country, wheels clacking a steady iamb that rocks the cracked bell asleep against the glass. You open the dream book, pages part like curtains, revealing a single new line written in lagoon blue ink. Where you go, we row. Below it, a tiny sketch of a sandalo and 3 sets of oars. Yours, Lucia's, Tasso's tail, already in motion. You smile, press the wax anchor onto the page. It melts slightly, sticking proof of tide to paper, sealing a contract that gravity will politely ignore. Outside, hedgerows blur into marginalia, each cow a comma grazing between clauses of wheat. Sunrise finishes its shift, clocks in daylight. The cracked bell catches every ray and fractures it into miniature dawns that skate across the carriage ceiling. A conductor punches tickets, pauses at the bell, decides some fares are too poetic to disturb. He moves on, leaving only the echo of a possible stanza. You close the book, feel pages settle like birds agreeing on a single tree for the night. Tonight, your heartbeat is their perch. Fields give way to suburbs, then the city to come, rooftops like unopened envelopes, windows tasting the air for stories worth licking shut. You tuck the marble button into the book's gutter, bookmark of luck that will choose the next page to turn. Neon signs flicker on, practicing modern constellations. You read them like footnotes Venice appended to your future. See also neon, also night shift, also the way home. Train slows, passengers gather belongings, but you wait, letting the final comma of travel settle before the period of arrival. When you step onto the platform, the cracked bell tinkles once, soft as an ellipsis, reminding you every ending is just a stanza break. You breathe city air, different salt, different smoke, same syntax of strangers. Behind, the train departs, taking rear view Venice with it, but the parenthesis remains open inside your chest, waiting for the next city to slip in and italicize alongside. Your apartment smells of absence and stale toast, neutral ground where foreign night can unpack its suitcases of salt and sequins. You place the dream book on the windowsill. City light outside reads the open page and blushes, unsure whether to applaud or anonymize. Shower runs sepia at first, old pipes clearing their throat of travel, then clears to ordinary, disappointingly non-metaphorical water. You wash off brine, candle smoke, rooftop trumpet. The tiled echo of Venice circles the drain, hesitates, decides to stay as residual lullaby. Drying off, you discover the wax anchor has left a tide mark on your skin. Pale ellipse just above the heart, proof of moon leasing square footage. Pajamas feel too landlocked. You knot the peony-scented domino around your wrist like a watch that tells only Venetian hours, all of them parentheses. Bed welcomes you with civilian cotton. No lagoon rock, no star stitching. You lie anyway, listening for gulls and hearing only radiator clanks practicing disapproval. Eyelids droop. The cracked bell on the bedside table tinkles once, unprompted. Soft Morse for story not over, merely intermission. You open the dream book. The blank index has begun to grow page numbers, tiny ones like baby teeth, listing cities you haven't visited yet. At the bottom, a new entry appears in lagoon blue ink. Pillow book exchange, see page 42. You turn, but page 42 is still asleep, curled like a cat around tomorrow's metaphors. Outside, midnight commences its shift. Neon leaks through curtains, painting couplets across your quilt. You let the curtains stay open, inviting any passing night shift poet to slip a stanza under the door, or at least borrow sugar in exchange for similes. Sleep tiptoes in, wearing Lucia's half-smile and Tasso's whiskers. It kneads your pillow into a sandalo, rocks you with a heartbeat set to lagoon time. Last conscious sound, the marble button rolling off the table, landing heads up on luck. Tiny clink of Venice checking in, making sure you're still enrolled in the correspondence course of night. Sleep well and sweet dreams.